Hey there viewers, welcome back. Today we have a 2011 Buick Enclave and it needs a brake job on all four corners. Let's take a look. These lugs fit in the socket kind of tight, as I find most of the aluminum coated ones do. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take the caliper bolts loose. It's a 13 mil. Shouldn't be in super tight. Pull this, it compresses the piston in a little bit. And just be able to set it right there. Let's take a look at the pads. So what you can see here is behind each pad is a little spring. I want to make sure that we put these all together exactly the same way. I noticed the ones on the bottom are both broken, so definitely replace the hardware whenever we're changing the pads too. So makes the pads a little bit easier to get out of the vehicle. You can clearly see that the pad is pretty much completely wore out, so definitely time to change those. Just go ahead and remove our pads right now because we can. Sometimes you can and sometimes you can't. Do take note that the little wear indicator was on the top inside. There's those. Next up is the caliper bracket. We're going to take the caliper bracket off so we can replace the rotor. Well, these are probably red Loctited in. Sometimes you got to apply a little bit of heat up here if they don't want to move. There goes the bracket. Yeah, we'll go this way. So we're going to prepare our caliper bracket. Drop that right on my arm. We're going to remove the old hardware. We're going to not destroy it or anything like that. It just pops right out. Do take note, sometimes the sides of the hardware are totally different and they won't interchange. These are identical. So just word of the wise there, everybody screws that up once or twice and sometimes it takes a bit to figure out. So what I'm going to do with this bracket now is we're going to go over to the sandblaster and I'm going to sandblast out any trash that's in this area to prevent the pads from seizing in the caliper bracket. So I'm going to do all four of these and probably this area here, and we'll be right back. Next, what we're going to do is take some of this brake caliper grease and we're going to put that on the caliper, or excuse me, on the bracket underneath our hardware. So this grease is never going to touch our pads, even though it's kind of designed for brake applications. And this is just going to help keep any rust, and it'll help with squeak, noise and things like that. Kind of helps, definitely helps keep that down. It's a little more than kinda. So don't have to put a lot, but just give it a nice thorough coating after sandblasting. You can use a file on these if you want. We're also going to pull out our caliper pins, and we're going to put just a little bit on that guy. Don't overdo it. I like to make sure there's plenty on this little lip right here where you, because it kind of helps keep the water out of that. So I push all the way in, kind of refluff the boot. Everything feels good on that. The boot's in great shape. If you put too much in there, the pin can actually bottom out in the grease and cause the pads to not disengage. So I'll put just a smidge. Again, we're not putting a ton in here, so. Boot's in good shape. Everything bottoms out nice. I'll pull that out and look at him one more time. Wipe that excess off the end there. There we go. Perfect. Perfect, as they say. Next, what we'll do is we'll put these new anti-rattle clips on. You just push on. You want to make sure that this edge is flush the inside of the caliper so it doesn't hit the rotor and make a bunch of noise. What we're going to do next is we're going to take a wire brush. Let me stand in your way here. I'm going to clean up the back sides good. Now this car has like no rust on it, which is really nice. I've taken sandpaper to these when they get really bad. And we're going to clean that up. Okay, looking at it, it's all down to bare steel. We're going to do the same with piston face. Everything looks super clean on those. I hit them with a Scotch-Brite. Okay, nice and clean. What we're going to do next, use our double donger. It's my first day on the job. We're going to install this guy. It's going to push both of our pistons back, and what I'm going to do, I suppose this step is slightly optional, is I'm going to use this to capture the fluid that comes out of the bleeder valve. Some folks open the bleeder valve and do this. We're just going to kind of rig that up like such. We're not bleeding the brakes, we're just not pushing the old nasty fluid back into the master cylinder or anything like that. So bleeder is open, and all we do now is give her the old squeeze. It's important to clean the piston face before you retract the pistons back into the calipers. This one, see how there's a little air pocket behind here? I don't know if you can see that or not, but that's pooched out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop, and I'm going to get a pick. We're going to lift this part up and let that air that's kind of trapped. I don't know if you guys can see that or not. I'll move this and let that air. You can see how this one here is not pooched out, and then this one here's got this bulge. So we're going to be super careful and fix that real quick. Alright, there's a couple things we can do to make this a little bit easier. Hit this guy with the brake clean. Sometimes you can kind of get up under it. You can grab your pick, keep it pointed at the piston, and kind of lift that seal a little bit. There we go. So I've got up under it, everything's sucked down nice and tight. I guess all you can see is my hands, sorry. Anyway, the brake clean kind of helps to keep that all good and happy. So what we're going to do next is we'll open the bleeder back up and we'll continue on where we were before. I suppose you guys can't see crap. You can see how that's not pooching out anymore. And there you got it. What we're going to do next is take this one Torx out. I'm going to just use their impact. I'm going to save it. And, of course, oh yeah. You know what this means when the rotor doesn't want to come off. Get the oil earmuffs out. What we got to do now, so I'm just going to use my drill and this neat little tool by 3M. Go around the studs. Clean all that rust off. And we'll the old wire brush out. Just a regular little whizzy wheel. So the reason that I do that, you can look and see that there's two, I'll zoom you in a bit. When you look at the hub face, there's two surfaces that the rotor rides on. And it's important that those are super squeaky clean, because if they don't, then the rotor can, well, it'll ride funny. It'll wobble. It'll have problems. And you don't want that. So I'm gonna finish cleaning this up. I do have, it works really good, piece of this red Scotch-Brite. Get on the right side here. And it is like fabulous for taking off this light rust. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but you just don't want to leave a ton of garbage on that. I've used sandpaper before. Just depends on how heavy the rust is. This is all cleaning up really nice. A lot of people don't do this, and I suppose you get away with it sometimes, but for the extra amount of time it takes, I don't have to worry about it. it's clean. Next that I'm going to use is a product called fluid film, and I'm going to spray it on the hub face. That's going to help keep any rust from building up behind that. And one of the trends that you're going to see with brake rotors is they're wrapping these, I think the back ones are done that way, but they're doing away with this plastic bag and the oil, and they're going to a like an anti-corrosive paper. So you see the little hole here, get that in frame, and we're going to line that up with our Torx. We're going to put just a little tiny dab of anti-seize on that, hopefully keep her from welding in. Boy, I'm getting a mess on the old cart here. That ain't good. Oh, I guess it's on my impact. Nice. We're going to go on torque setting of 1. We're not going to force that down. Don't need to do that. And that's going to hold our rotor on. So the next thing we're going to do, we're going to give this the old spray down. You got to do this on the oil covered, maybe it's not oil, I don't know what it is, but some sort of a coating. So the paper, you put this anti-corrosive paper that I was telling you about a little bit ago. With that, it eliminates this step. So it saves you some time. Make sure your rotor's square up on the vehicle. That's always nice. Back. I'll tighten that Torx just a little bit more. But we don't want any of that garbage getting on the brake pads. That's all she needs. Don't get too wild. Next, I'll fluid film the hub face. Try not to spray it all over the rotor. Okay. And then, give my rotor one last little wash on the outside. Get some towels. And we are done. Next, let's prep that caliper. We're going to do the same thing on the caliper as we did on the caliper bracket. We're just going to put a little bit of special brake grease. Please don't put wheel bearing grease or anything like that. Not designed for this application. This just really helps with the squeaking, and it takes so little time. It also helps, being from South Dakota, it really helps with the rust and the pads sticking and things like that. So they make a purple version of this, the Extreme, and it's a little more money. We'll probably buy that when this can runs out, just because it looks cool. So basically, wherever the pad contacts the caliper, I want there to be a little bit of this grease behind there. And like I said, it helps with the corrosion. You'll notice that on my caliper piston seal, or the dust boot rather, it's not really the piston seal, that's all nice and flat. If I didn't flatten that, if I just slapped a pad right on that, we may have an issue with that getting pinched between the piston face and the back of the pad, and well, there goes your caliper. So nobody wants that. So considering our caliper bracket bolts had Loctite on them to begin with, I'm just going to put the bottle's almost out. It's always empty. Anytime you turn the camera on, every bottle in the shop's instantly empty. Every tool is lost. Every bolt's stripped out. You name it. That's how it's going to be. Next, what we're going to do, now some caliper brackets, the, wow. I just did that. It's my first day. Having a story. It's been a long day. It's kind of end of the school year. And, yeah, how she goes. Anyway, some caliper brackets, the pads will go in from the inside. It's just easier that way. These got these little springy fingers that I think they're easier to put in. Put the pads in after the bracket is already installed on your car. So these things are pretty dang tight. Yeah. Torqued to factory spec. Little guy down here popped out. He's still in. I'm going to give her a quick visual inspection. We just want to make sure that our hardware, it's usually really good about centering itself up, but just want to make sure there's sufficient space between the rotor and the brake disc so it doesn't, make a bunch of wonky sounds, things like that. We're going to center the flats up on our caliper pins. Everything's good on those. Let's go ahead and install our pads. We're going to put the squeaker, a little squeaker tab. Now, I guess I should probably point this out on how this is going to look. But you might think that this little finger fits underneath the pad, but that's not the case on how these work. It actually clips in fairly easy. Right as I say that, famous last words. So just kind of push down, get my big head in there. Ooh, there we go. And one. Might need a little screwdriver to push that bad boy up. There we go. Okay, there we go. Just had to get all the angles lined up. So what it does is part of the anti-rattle is that it keeps constant pressure on the caliper, and so it kind of keeps things quiet. So that's how those are supposed to be, nice and springy. Should never have to file the ears down. If you do, get a different set of pads. These pads also got a shim built in with the back. It came glued when they were new, so I did not have to install that. We're going to do the same with the pad on the other side. Okay, so this one has no squeaker, so you can kind of see how we're going to drop that guy in. And then there's a little lock that keeps it from falling out, which is ever so thoughtful. So what I was fighting is on the back, there's a little tension on that guy as well. So if everything's put in right, we'll smush him down a bit. Your pads should float around and move around fairly easy. This guy probably just needs a little bit of persuasion, but that's basically what we're looking for. So our next step is going to be to take our caliper, and I take the bungee cord off. Never let it hang by the hose, that can damage it. And I throw the bungee cord on the floor because I don't want to forget it on the customer's car. So that's what we're going to do here for putting the caliper back onto the pads. Put a little anti-seize, just a little dibby dab on each caliper pin bolt. Start them in by hand. These are not very tight. Bad things will happen if you force them. I don't speak from experience on that one, fortunately. So sometimes you got to work a little bit slower, work a little faster. So you can see my caliper is capable of moving back and forth, no binding. That's exactly what we want. Before I forget, I'm going to grab my 10 mil wrench and a diaper. and I'm just going to open this bleeder one last time and make sure that solid fluid comes out. So they'll usually gravity bleed a little bit. I can vacuum bleed by myself as well. I don't have an adapter for this particular master cylinder for my pressure bleeder, so whatever. This will get any air, anything like that out. So far there's no fluid. So here comes the fluid. Slowly. Very slowly. We'll give it time. I might just leave that bleeder open while I'm tightening up my caliper pin bolts. Oh, there's the fluid. Good. So, just snug. Don't break them off. We're going to close the bleeder. Solid fluid coming out. I do that with my fingers first. Okay. Everything's good on that. We're going to wipe it down. Fresh rag. A little brake clean. Don't go wild with it. I don't want to dissolve my grease I just spent a bunch of time putting on. But I also don't want them looking under the car and seeing, you know, hey, you got a fluid leak. No, it's just my mess. So anyway, what I'm going to do now is give my bleeder a little tube fluid film. And I really like these style caps that GM's putting on their vehicles. I think it's a lot better design than what we had before. So I just spin it around a little bit, get that fluid film worked in there good. It's a good product. Okay, so at this point everything is together. I'm just going to double check all my fasteners one more time. The brake line looks wonderful. I don't know how many miles are on this vehicle, but just kind of give it a cursory inspection while we're here. Any ripped CV boots, anything like that. I think we're ready to put the wheel back on. Well, there you got it, folks. Front brakes on your 2011 Buick Enclave. Before you drive, always make sure you pump up your brake pedal, make sure that's good and firm. Before you do that, make sure your brake fluid reservoir is full. We did not push the old fluid back into the reservoir, so it's going to be a little bit low. Nothing wrong with adding a little bit of new fluid to it. Make sure, like I said, your pedal's good and solid, and then take it for a test drive. We have one more video on this vehicle coming up. It's going to be the rear brake job. Pretty much the exact same thing that you saw here in the front, but hey, why not, right? The pads are just a little bit smaller, as are the rotors, but the overall procedure is going to be exactly the same. So with that being said, if you liked what we did here, please make sure to subscribe to our channel. Give us the thumbs up. We'll keep producing videos like this. Leave us a comment if you haven't done so already. And as always, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.